The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Ryedale again, everybody. Now behind me there you can see a pub. It's called the Half Moon Inn. There's a sign on its wall there that says temporarily closed. It's never a good thing to see a pub temporarily closed, is it? Well, this one might be a little bit more than just temporarily closed. According to Google, it's permanently closed. Well, we'll see. This is Acklam. Acklam at the Oak Woods. Today in Ryedale we're in the village of Acklam, which is around 12 miles away from York and 6 miles away from Malton. Although small, Acklam was a very important place historically. It gave its name to the ancient Acklam Hundred and was a religious centre for many villages in the southern areas of Ryedale. We already know about Leavening, for example. Like Leavening, Acklam was part of the East Riding of Yorkshire until 1974, and it does feel exactly like an East Riding village should. This is a peaceful village. It's unsurprising really when you consider that Acklam is well off the beaten track, with only some small winding lanes and roads leading in and out of it. It sits on the western slopes of the Yorkshire Wolds, and this high land is composed mainly of chalk overlain by clay soils. There are outcrops of mudstones, clay and calcareous sandstone. The highest point is Acklam Wold at 230 metres above sea level, whilst the lowest is Leavening Beck at the western extremity. It's certainly not a flat place. The main street is basically one big undulation, and we'll see that in action on this walk. Farming is of course king out here. Acklam has a mixture of both arable and pasture. Landmarks wise, there's a few that we can see and a couple we definitely can't. Among the visible ones is a pub called the Half Moon Inn, a church, a village hall and an old chapel. Not visible anymore is a former church and a castle, but we can see where they both were. It might be a tiny Wolds village, but Acklam has way more than meets the eye at first glance. Let's go for a walk through it and see what it has to offer. It's a gorgeous little place. Let's get things going here in Acklam with the Half Moon Inn at the western end of the village. This dates back to the 1820s, although exactly when is not known. In 2008, this was bought by Margaret Jessup, who moved from Pocklington and snapped it up when it came onto the market following the death of the previous owner. It's seen many changes over the years, and the most significant is that within the past 2 years, it's closed long term. Its future, therefore, is somewhat uncertain. It served traditional home-cooked food using local produce, which was served daily. It also had regular live music and quiz evenings too. Next we come to St John the Baptist Church. This is Anglican, but it does have ties to the Methodists as well. The history of Acklam's church begins centuries ago, when the first church to serve the village was built at an unknown date in the medieval period. It was rebuilt in 1790 as a small building with a nave, a chancel, a south porch and a square west tower. It had a capacity of 250 worshippers. It was again rebuilt in 1868 by J.B. and W. Atkinson of York, but that building no longer stands. It was declared redundant and demolished in 1972. However, as you can see, there is still a church here. So what's this? Well, in 1794, the Methodists erected a chapel in Acklam. It was a rectangular building with a pan-tile roof, and this is it. Local legend says that John Wesley himself once preached from the upper windows. Following the closure of the Anglican Church in 1972, it was acquired by them and rededicated as the new St John the Baptist Church. Later on in this video, I'll show you where the Victorian St John's Church once stood. It was at the eastern end of the village at the bottom of Thrussendale Road. There's a little bench in the churchyard here. If you sit on this, you have an absolutely amazing view into the Yorkshire Wolds. Now, I'm not going to sit down because I've still got loads to do here in Acklam, but if you ever find yourself in this position, take advantage of this. I don't think you're going to regret it. Now for the rest of the village, which is generally all laid out along Main Street. Most of the houses in Acklam were built in either the 18th or the 19th centuries, but there is at least one 17th century house and a few built in the 20th. The older houses of the village are built of a hard white calcareous sandstone, which was obtained from a local quarry. This is a peaceful village. Quite often the only thing you can hear are the birds singing in the trees. Not much traffic comes through Acklam either. As mentioned in the intro, Acklam is well off the beaten track, with only some small winding lanes and roads leading in and out of it. Acklam sits on the western slopes of the Yorkshire Wolds. This highland is composed mainly of chalk overlain by clay soils, but there are outcrops of mudstones, clay and that calcareous sandstone. The highest point is Acklam Wold at 230 metres above sea level, whilst the lowest is Leavening Beck at the western extremity. It's not flat. One of the most notable buildings can be seen on the right just before the road starts to bend southwards. That would be Acklam Grange. This was formerly the rectory and it's shown as such on the 1893 OS map. The next house on the right was the vicarage, slightly older and listed on maps in the 1850s. Near both buildings on the road outside is a well built into the grass bank. So at this point down the main street you can see that it's definitely not flat. Behind me there's a big hill which we need to climb in a second, and we've just walked down an equally big hill to get to this point. Here, look, you see the road's steep incline just there heading back up towards the Half Moon Inn and the church and the village hall and all that. And also added into the mix at this junction there's another road which drops off steeply downhill that way, so we are definitely not in a flat place here. Just before the junction, where the village continues along Pasture Hill to the south, is a former primitive Methodist chapel built in 1821. I'm sure you'll agree it doesn't look like a chapel having simple rectangular windows, but there is a small plaque above the door confirming its former use. Maps from the 1850s show this as a parochial school, later to be replaced by the National School in 1852, which of course became the village hall. Now we're on Throssendale Road, which bends slightly southwards before heading eastwards towards the massive Acklam Wold transmitting station. As we learned earlier, Throssendale Road is where the original church, now demolished, once stood. You can still access the churchyard even though the building is no longer here. Nicholas Pevsner reckoned this was quite an ambitious church with a wide nave and a chancel and a tower, originally with a pyramid-shaped roof at the western end. South of the former church is Acklam Beck, which rises from springs, and there's a covered reservoir nearby too. So let's have a little bit of an explore of this churchyard. Okay, so the big open space you can find here in this old churchyard is where the church used to be. I know that because I looked at the old OS maps before I came here, so I know currently I'm standing where the church once was. To be fair, even if you didn't look at the maps, you could still sort of guess, because there are some brilliant clues. I mean, for a start, there's no graves around here. I mean, they're all over here and up here and down here, you know, so there's no graves here because this is where the church was. I imagine this wall was part of the church as well, or at least maybe a retaining wall for the churchyard. Maybe there was a path here between the church and this wall. Don't know for definite about that, but certainly the church stood in this open space. You can even sit a while here on this bench and just, you know, while the hours away in the peacefulness and quiet that this provides. And over here there's a little box and it says churchyard plan on it. So let's have a little look inside. There we go. There's a little leaflet inside which will probably tell you a lot more about the church than I have, to be honest with you. Now, just before we leave this churchyard behind, I noticed something in here when I walked in. Let's head across to these trees because there's a sign in here. And this isn't actually anything to do with the church, but I still think it's worth putting this in the video because if there are any Acklam residents out there who have moved away to places further afield like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, anything like that, you might be interested in this. Acklam of yesteryear. We would love to see your precious old photos of the village and past loved ones. Please join the many people who have already contributed towards our village archive. Also paintings by A.W. Carter, including small portraits. Not sure about certain items, please ask. We identify most things for you. And there's some contact details there. Okay, and underneath it says, we have a 1919 Acklam school photo with no names. We need help. If you think you may have a family member on it, please contact us for a copy. Okay, so now we're driving up to Acklam Wold, and you seriously cannot miss its biggest landmark. There's a radio tower up here which sits at the top of the wold, and it's a perfect place for one. It broadcasts BBC Radio York and Minster FM, and it also serves DAB, various mobile operators and other services. The tower sits on a road junction which on old maps is shown as an entrenchment. That's since been destroyed, but aerial photographs show the line of it as a crop mark. It was presumably one of the linear earthworks stated to be of the Iron Age that can be found all across the Yorkshire Wolds. You might remember similar ones at Huggett, for example. This road was probably Roman and ran from South Newbold to Moulton, crossing Acklam Wold on the way. In 1850, this was all unfenced rough pasture, but was enclosed soon after in 1854. On it are many tumuli, including a well-known Bronze Age cemetery. The tumuli were still shown on the map dated 1960, but they've now been flattened. A few might still be visible as crop marks on aerial photographs, though. As you leave the village to the south, you'll drive up a hill. This is Pasture Hill, and all the houses and buildings are on the right-hand side. They're referred to on maps as Scotland. If you look to the right after you pass them, you'll see the remains of an earthwork Motte Bailey castle on a ridge. I stopped to have a look. Not a lot is known about this one, but there are some theories. It was possibly an outlying stronghold of the Fossard family, and it stood in an ideal spot. Standing as it did on the western edge of an east-to-west ridge, the castle was formed by the digging of two simple transverse ditches. In the top of the low motte is a shallow depression, and stone structures have been identified in the large rectangular bailey. Now, you can't walk to this because this is all private land. From the road, farm buildings make the layout hard to observe, but you can at least see where it all was. Acklam represents a type of Motte Bailey castle whose configuration was specifically adapted to suit the natural topography of its location. Although its northern and eastern edges have been altered by modern terracing or by road construction, the majority of the monument is well preserved. Below ground features associated with the occupation of the castle and foundations of its timber structures will survive, although those have, as far as I'm aware, never been excavated. Earthworks are common around Acklam. These are just a few of the ones you can see if you look hard enough. In addition to these and the ones on Acklam Wold, it's also believed there was once a palace belonging to the Archbishop of York somewhere in Acklam, but no one's really sure where it was. Personally, I think it was never in Acklam. We're not too far away from Bishop Wilton here, so people may be getting confused with the former palace we visited there. Okay, that leaves us with just one more thing to do here before we leave the parish of Acklam behind. This road here, which passes the castle, goes through a place called Barthorpe, which is about 1.5 miles down the road, and that also is within the parish boundaries. So we'll drive through that, we'll talk a little bit about the gun room while we're at it, and that will be that for the parish of Acklam. Now, as we've seen, businesses in Acklam aren't exactly plentiful. One of the biggest out here is actually in a secondary hamlet that falls within Acklam's boundaries. This road runs through a place called Barthorpe, where aside from farms, you can find something called the gun room at Barthorpe Grange. The name Barthorpe Grange suggests that this former medieval township might have been at least partly owned by a monastery. It's hardly a village now, it's barely even a hamlet. Historians reckon it was depopulated by the Black Death. The monks from the monastery would then likely have used much of the land as sheep pasture until the dissolution in the mid-16th century. For whatever reason, the township was merged with Acklam, although the two are shown as separate divisions on the 1850s OS maps. So anyway, the Barthorpe Gun Room. It's a professional gun shop run by Rob Hall, a former England clay shooter. It offers a range of services including gun and rifle sales, clothing, ammunition, repairs, coaching and advice. The shop is known for its quality second-hand gun purchases and also has an online shop. And we are through Acklam. What a fabulous little village. Now, I've no idea when I'll be back to Ryedale next. I have no plans to return this year, so it'll probably take a hiatus for a bit. That said, I often move my plans around to accommodate things, so who knows, maybe I'll be back this year after all. It's always a great area to visit, so it'll be worth the wait. See you later. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.